I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. Senator John Cornyn reacted to the Uvalde Elementary School shooting on the Senate floor Thursday. In his somber remarks, the Texas senator expressed his grief for his state's community. Cornyn then called for bipartisan solutions. He said, quote, "I'm not interested in the same old tired talking points. I'm actually interested in what we can do to make the terrible events that occurred in Uvalde less likely in the future." This is the latest incident in a string of mass shootings that has renewed the gun control debate in the country. Here's more from the Texas senator.
Well, Mr. President, today is supposed to be the last day of school in Uvalde, Texas. Each of us can remember how excited we were as children, as students, but especially we can remember being a parent at the last day of school our child attended. Your child would perhaps run into your arms and recount a fun-filled day with their classmates. They'd sling their backpack on the back seat of the car and talk about how excited they were about the summer, to spend days playing with their friends and their siblings, swimming at the local pool with friends, and maybe even going on a vacation with their grandparents. Today, those children, those parents, and those teachers in Uvalde, Texas have been robbed of the excitement and normalcy that this day would normally bring. Instead of celebrating the last day of school, 21 families are making funeral arrangements. Earlier this week, a monster viciously murdered innocent children and their teachers at Robb Elementary School. So far, we know that 21 people have been killed by the shooter, including 19 students and 2 teachers. This tragedy has absolutely shattered the tight-knit community of Uvalde, Texas. Uvalde is about a town of about 15,000 people, about 65 miles from the U.S.-Mexican border. There's one high school football team, one H-E-B grocery store, and one post office. The families in Uvalde have known each other and loved each other's children for as long as they can remember. Caused by this attack is shared by the entire community. And I join all Texans in lifting up the victims, their families, and those who are struggling to make sense of this tragedy. Yesterday, I was in Uvalde with my fellow Texans in mourning. I joined hundreds of people to donate blood and received an update from law enforcement, both state and community leaders. As though we needed a reminder of the tight-knit community, with a deputy sheriff himself lost his own daughter in this attack, and 2 members of the mayor's staff lost children as well. One of the conversations I had that really struck home was an older gentleman who responded to the call for blood donations at the Herbie Ham Activity Center. As we waited our turn to donate blood, he shared with me that he had lost 2 grandchildren in the shooting. It's not possible for us to comprehend the pain he must be feeling, but there he was, donating blood. 2 young lives were stolen from his family, and still this man stood in line so he could support his community in some tangible way. During the briefing from law enforcement, 2 of the Uvalde police officers who responded to the shooting shared their harrowing experience with us. And in the face of such unthinkable evil, their courage was unwavering. One of these Uvalde police officers responded to the scene, and I had a chance to thank him personally. But I want to thank all of the law enforcement officials, the emergency medical technicians, and healthcare workers who responded to this tragedy and continue to support the survivors and their loved ones. At times like this, I'm reminded of a quote I heard some time ago from a county commissioner in the face of a similar tragedy. He said, "Being a Texan doesn't describe where you're from as much as it describes who your family is." Today, our entire family is mourning. Our hearts are broken by those who lost loved ones and the survivors who will never forget this terrifying and senseless attack. While the terror of this attack will weigh on all of us, we saw the spirit of my state on full display as resources poured out to help the loved ones of the community that were hurting so badly. From mental health counseling to food donations, there was an outflow of support from the South Texas community. At times like this, words seem so inadequate. There's no good way to completely express the heartbreak and anger that swell in your chest at a moment like this. All we can say, perhaps, is that our condolences are with the families grieving such a cruel and unexpected loss. I can't fathom the pain of seeing an empty bed where your child slept the night before. Knowing we can't turn back the clock to prevent this tragedy from occurring, the obvious question then is, how do we prevent something like this from happening again? At this point, law enforcement is still investigating and piecing together the full story. In the coming days, I expect we will have better information about the shooter and his background and the circumstances that led to this senseless, brutal act. Once it does, I'm eager to see whether there are any gaps that might have done something to make this attack less likely, that might have actually even prevented this attack from taking place. In the past, I've worked with colleagues on both sides of the aisle to prevent senseless tragedies from occurring through things like Fix NICS and the Mental Health and Safe Communities Act. Fix NICS, you'll recall, occurred after the Sutherland Springs shooting, where the shooter was not, his criminal convictions were not uploaded by the Air Force into the National Instant Criminal Background Check. And so he was able to go to a local sporting goods store and buy weapons by lying and buying. And I'm convinced that working with Senator Murphy and all of our colleagues, we were able to get 70 or more co-sponsors on that bill because it actually addressed a real gap in the system, and it would actually give us some hope that we'd actually save lives in the future. I'm not interested in making a political statement. I'm not interested in the same old tired talking points. I'm actually interested in what we can do to make the terrible events that occurred in Uvalde less likely in the future. And now we don't know everything we need to know. But once we do, I expect there will be an informed debate about reforms we can make. And I look forward to participating in those discussions. For now, the focus should remain on supporting the people of this little community who suffered an immeasurable loss this week. Mr. President, I yield the floor.